All right. Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Design Unmuted. Today, I'm very happy to welcome my friend Saba Farmand as a guest on the podcast today. Before we get started, I want to acknowledge that we are here on the stolen and ceded lands of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people. And very grateful to live on these lands that have been stewarded by the indigenous peoples of these lands, and doing our very best to honor them. So, without further ado, Saba Farmand is a landscape designer, community builder, and just vibe bringer. So,
Vibe bringer.
Could you please introduce yourself to the audience?
Sure. Well, thank you first, Divine, for inviting me here today. This is really exciting, being here at your first kind of real professional setup. This is legit. I'm a landscape architect, born here in Vancouver. My family immigrated from Iran to Vancouver. Just live in Vancouver, specifically the part of town that's today known as East Vancouver, in the Mount Pleasant neighborhood there. And I may be better known for starting East Van Boulevard Gardens, which we're going to talk about today.
Yes, I would really like to get into how you got started into that. And also about your journey into landscape architecture as well, because as we know, a lot of people don't know about landscape architecture. And our profession doesn't have a lot of people of color as well. So I'm very excited to hear about your journey and what your experience has been like, and how that has also led you to this amazing community project, which I should mention has garnered a lot of attention and a lot of meaning in the community. Saba has been leading a lot of tours last summer, and also garnering a lot of attention, sometimes not always great, which we will hear more about.
The drama.
There's a little bit of drama.
Spicy.
Yes. So before we begin, perhaps you could tell us a little bit more about your journey into landscape architecture.
Sure. Yeah. My journey into landscape architecture. Yeah. It's like you said, it's a very below the radar profession that doesn't get very much attention, and therefore not many people know about it. But how I got started, I think we should really begin in high school. The kind of latter years of my high school, I wasn't living the most righteous or wasn't really on the best path, let's say. Wasn't living a very positive life. Luckily, my big sister, she was looking out for her baby bro. She convinced me that I should study hard enough for my provincials. Mind you, my grades were I was barely graduating. So she's like, just study hard enough for your provincials so you have an option to go to university or college after you graduate high school. So she kind of whipped my butt into gear to study enough for my provincials, where I got barely good enough grades in those that I was accepted into just one of the three local universities that I applied to, the University of Victoria. Shout out UVic. I went there for my undergrad, and the first portion of undergrad wasn't great. I was struggling hard academically. I was on academic probation within the first term. Wasn't looking good for the boy.
But look at you now.
Yeah, but luckily there were a series of fortunate kind of events that... So the first biggest important thing was I stumbled upon an art history course during my undergrad, which I ended up majoring in. And, who would have thought that UVic, of all places, would have a very good Islamic art and architecture program, specifically with two PhD doctorates who were professors in Persian art and architecture. So naturally, as a Persian person myself, I found a lot of the content in that course. Very intriguing, interesting, engaging. And for the first time in my life, I started getting like A pluses, like 90 plus, like really, really high grades, right? So things started to set in motion for the better in like towards the latter end of second year, which is also the time that I met who was then my college sweetheart, who's now my wife, who was a very positive influence in my life and a very bright person. I remember one of the first times we hung out, she actually wrote in one of the courses I was struggling in, political science, she wrote my term paper for me. So I don't know if we can call it a date, but like one of our first dates.
You scored.
Yeah, big time.
Literally.
Big time. Landscape architecture during this time kind of kept popping up at random times. One of my professors, while we were learning about mostly Islamic art and architecture, the tradition of garden design, like the Mughal gardens and Chahar Baghs, like four gardens, which is a Persian garden typology. We were learning about these things. He mentioned to me landscape architecture. I think my mother-in-law kind of mentioned it also because she was also interested in gardening. And I was also, in the summers when I'd come back from UVic and live with my family at their home here in Vancouver, my next-door neighbor happened to be a landscape architect. So he kind of put me under his wing, and he was really my first mentor. And one of those summers I was working as a landscaper. And on the site that I was working on, Paul Senga, a local prominent landscape architect here, it was one of his projects. And I met him. I got to shout him out too because he invited me to his office for like a office visit. So that was my first kind of real office visit. And yeah, just ended up learning more about landscape architecture through that and applied to the program at UBC. And that's where I got my master's.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that story with us. That's amazing. So I'm also interested in learning more if kind of like your background in art history, how that influences your work today.
Yeah, I've never really thought about that, to be honest. I think it was really, I see it more as, I don't know if it influences my work that much, but the takeaway for me was it was a important stepping stone, a realization that I'm really interested in architectural history and architecture. And around the same time, I was spending a lot more time in nature. And as you know, I don't do too much design work. My work right now is mainly related to planning and policy. I like my 9-to-5 work, not my East Van Boulevard Gardens work. Yeah. So I bet if I was a designer, though, I'd love to, implement a lot of Persian and Islamic art and architectural components into my designs.
Yeah. I mean, you are a designer. You're a community building designer.
I guess
what you have done, I think, has actually put landscape architecture on the map a whole lot more than when we talk within our community ourselves, because you've brought it out into the community and shown how it's around us, right?
That's always been a major passion of mine. Even when I first graduated from landscape architecture program, this kind of strong burning desire to promote our profession and make people realize you've ever sat in a park under a tree or walked along a path walked along a path by the ocean or gone through a forest. That's the work that landscape architects do, the importance of spreading the word. And that's related very much in line with one of my bigger kind of passion projects that I did almost 10 years ago now. Shout out to my boy Paul Alvey. He was a videographer. I was a struggling landscape architect. We were both in between jobs at the time. Yeah. And we combined our passions of, he's a videographer and landscape architecture. We combined those passions and we created a video series on landscape architecture in Metro Vancouver. And major goal of that was to promote the profession of landscape architecture to the general public.
Oh, okay.
And just to touch on something you mentioned earlier, it's really important to promote the profession to a broader audience than what the typical landscape architectural and design material usually reaches.
Absolutely.
It's not a very diverse profession. And so one of the things I'm extremely proud about with my project is my walking tours, which we'll get to later. You see a great diversity of not only ages, but also, the way people look. There's all sorts of people at my tours, and I'm pretty sure if you go to a typical garden tour, you wouldn't see that level of diversity.
I think you're absolutely right. Actually, let's get into it. And before we get into it, being aware that a lot of people don't know what a boulevard garden is, could we begin? Could we begin with? Can you give us a little bit of an introduction to somebody who's never heard what a boulevard garden is?
Yes, yeah. So the standard kind of road sidewalk configuration in most areas of our city is we have the road in the middle where the cars drive and park, and then we have the sidewalk several feet further away from the road, going parallel to it. So you have road, sidewalk, and in between the road and the sidewalk is the boulevard. So the boulevard is typically grass, lawn. That's like the default treatment. And on the boulevard, we typically have street trees, electricity poles, lamp posts, and the default treatment of the boulevard, like I said, is lawn. And so a boulevard garden is anytime anyone comes and replaces that lawn with any sort of what I like to call garden-like intervention in the broadest sense of the word. They rip up that lawn and install a garden in pots, plants,
Right.
a bench,
Right.
anything. I call that a boulevard garden, and most people would call that a boulevard garden too if you asked them, I guess.
Yes.
So my project documents it started on Instagram where I document each and every boulevard garden that I see.
Yeah, I guess like those boulevard gardens really stand out because most of boulevards are typically grass, which is often not even that well maintained. So I actually just want to ask you to think back on those initial interests in starting to notice them and document them.
Good question. Yeah. So really, since my project is on Instagram, the whole idea of starting this project was to create an Instagram account where I posted photos of every single boulevard garden I saw. And this was partly inspired by other Instagram people who were doing similar things, but not with boulevard gardens in my neighborhood. So my wife and I moved to Mount Pleasant in East Vancouver about over 10 years ago now. We've lived in different parts of it. And Mount Pleasant is in East Van, and there's a couple Instagram accounts that I started following, like East Van Hoops, where he takes a picture of every kind of basketball hoop he sees around East Van. And I play basketball, so I've naturally drawn to that. But then I'm a landscape architect, so I was also drawn to East Van Gates and Garages. I hope that's his right handle. But he takes pictures of interesting gates and garages and fences that he sees around East Van. And around that same time, my wife and I love going on walks. Like, we're like old people trapped in not so young bodies. We go on long walks often. And I'm always taking pictures of stuff. And I thought, man, it would be cool if you just documented and captured every boulevard garden you saw. And so that's how it started.
All right, I just want to take a moment to thank the Real Estate Foundation of BC for sponsoring this episode of Design Unmuted. The Real Estate Foundation of BC is a philanthropic organization working to advance sustainable land use and real estate practices in British Columbia. They do this by funding projects, connecting people, and sharing knowledge. Their grants support not-for-profit organizations working to improve BC communities and natural environments through responsible and informed land use, conservation, and real estate practices. They're particularly interested in land use projects that contribute to the upholding of Indigenous rights and title and racial equity and justice. You can learn more at www.refbc.com. Thank you for your support of Design Unmuted. Now, let's get back to it.
Amazing. And when did you start the Instagram account?
It was pre-COVID. A lot of people think it was a COVID project, but it was pre-COVID. I want to say by like a year or 18 months.
I mean, it looks great. Like, I really do encourage everybody who's not following that account to go follow, especially if you live in Vancouver, and go to the tours in the summers. I think do you do them other times there, other than the summer?
April. I just do them
Like
once a year
spring?
now.
Yeah.
April, yeah.
Yeah.
Coinciding with Earth Day.
Oh, great. Yeah, of course. Well thought out. I also wanted to acknowledge how important social media can be in building community, because this entire project started off on social media, but often we hear it's become divided now, right? Where the ills of social media are starting to kind of like overtake the discourse of how great of a tool it can also be, just because of how toxic it can be and how much we can spend time in there. So I'm wondering what's your perspective in terms of like social media, reconciling social media, and also I'm sure you want people to be out and experience these things outside in real life, but you're also creating a different space in this virtual world.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we're always reminded to be aware of how much screen time we spend, right? How much time we spend doing the scroll of doom or
Doom scroll?
Doom scroll. Thank you, doom scroll. So maybe I just love Instagram so much that I started this project, so it could be an excuse to just be on Instagram
The
all
truth
the time.
comes out.
No, for real though, I don't. Maybe I don't. Maybe there's some truth in that. I don't think about it because I feel like what I'm doing on Instagram is productive. Maybe it's not, but I'd like to think it is.
I think it is. I think it is.
And like honestly, I did spend I wasn't like Instagram addicted or spent too much time on my phone prior to this project, but like my personal Instagram, I've like cut down the usage and posting. All my social media time is now spent towards East Van Boulevard Gardens. I don't know if that answers your question.
I mean, I understand totally, because I also have my personal Instagram account and my podcast account, because I really do like my privacy and want to separate those two things. And I have a different approach to Instagram depending on which account I'm on. When I'm on my podcast page, there's a level of it that is work.
Right.
This is me trying to communicate with people. I'm trying to build certain relationships. I'm trying to, it's much more intentional. And when I'm on my personal one, it's just a little bit chaotic. And I love that. It's just like crazy, funny, stupid memes, a lot of quotes.
Yeah, you're a good follow. I follow both. And they're both fun.
Yeah. But let's get back into the real world now, into the Boulevard Gardens, and talk a little bit more about your experience. I want to hear what has been the most surprising thing that you've experienced, kind of like being outside documenting these gardens,
Gotcha.
leading your tours that you could not have anticipated in your preparations.
Okay, you got your pen and pad ready.
I got
Can
my
you take
pen.
notes? So
Yes.
there's 3 things I want to talk about.
Okay.
1, like growth. 2, the tours. And 3, the spicy part, the drama, which I don't want to talk about much because the world's got enough negative energy in it right now. And even though that shit sells, oh, sorry, I cursed.
It's okay. We can curse. We can
even though
curse
that
here.
stuff sells, even though that stuff sells, I like not to delve on it too much. But anyway, so the first thing that surprised me was the growth online. So not in the real world. Again, reverting back to the virtual. My uptick in followers increased pretty quickly. Just from posting iPhone photos of Boulevard Gardens, which I thought was pretty neat and surprising. The second thing was tours. Thank you. So related to the growth of it online, the tours and how they came about and what they've evolved is a very fun and interesting story. So I think we can get into that now. One of my followers who I never met in real life had a nonprofit based in the community, and she got a grant to host these environmental community building events in her neighborhood. And she, this was at the beginning of the pandemic, towards the start of it, just when they opened up kind of outdoor gatherings a bit more. So you're allowed to gather outdoors in groups, but I think up to, I don't know, however many numbers. We kept it under the numbers. But so anyway, she approached me and she's like, hey, I have money to do these, environmentally themed community building events. Do you want to give us a tour of some of your favorite boulevard gardens? And I thought, sure, why not? I've never done anything like this before, but we're in the pandemic. The world probably seems like it's going to end like any day now. So
It's been ending since.
for real. So we went for it, and I was surprised with the turnout. There was a pretty decent turnout. Another sub-pleasant surprise was, so she had money for funding reasons to get future grants. Again, she had to pay me for the tours, but I really didn't want to get paid. So I decided to donate the payment to the Mount Pleasant Neighborhood House, which is a great nonprofit in my community. Look them up. They do a lot of great work. That led to the idea of hosting the tours and making them by donation, with all proceeds going to the Mount Pleasant Neighborhood House. So I've been able to meet some of the executive staff at the neighborhood house, work with them, get their support for these tours, raise thousands of dollars for them. So the first round of tours was great, but honestly, I'm not that ambitious. I really had no intentions on doing the tours again. Until another one of my followers, she's a local realtor named Zora. She approached me, she followed me for some time, and I didn't know who she was until I got this message from her. And she was interested in, as a means of promoting her business as a local realtor, she wanted to sponsor more tours. And I took that as an opportunity to raise more funds for the Mount Pleasant Neighborhood House. So we went for it, and I did a few tours with her sponsoring, and she printed out, now that I had sponsorship money, I could get some nice tour handouts and materials that she had like a graphic designer prepare. And so, just that first tour with her, like we had a great turnout. Like there were lots of people who showed up. And something you touched on earlier, using Instagram, I need to shout out East Van Garden Gal. She's a local influencer who's doing great things. Greenfluencer, as I like to call us.
Oh, nice.
She came out, and she also brought a pre-Instagram local celebrity, Tamara Taggart, who some people might know. And she's got a fairly large following online. Both of these, East Van Garden Gal, Jen and Tamara Taggart, loved my tours. They promoted it, and my followers, skyrocketed from there. So those tours were great, and they've been so much fun since, and they've been like the main draw of, I think, my project. I've had neighbors who didn't know they were neighbors, meet for the first time on my tour. Like that's happened twice now, where people have been neighbors for multiple years now, and they just happen to be chatting randomly in my tour, and they're like, "Oh, hey, we're neighbors."
That's amazing.
Isn't that cool? Yeah. So it's like
really
community
great.
building, like in real life, and also online. Neighbors often, or people often comment under certain posts when they see that I post their boulevard garden, like, "Hey, that's my boulevard garden," or "Ooh, I walk by that one every day. I love it so much." So moments like that, seeing that both online and in real life, are very special and gratifying. So the tours, I'm also getting like some local businesses who sponsor me, who like what I'm doing. They've donated lots of prizes. So at the end of the tours, I do these random giveaways where I just give prizes out to tour attendees. So I've given out prizes from DL Chicken, An and Chi, a great Vietnamese restaurant on Main Street.
I love An and
Isn't
Chi.
it so good? Yeah. Yeah.
Oh
I'm
gosh.
hungry now. Yeah, mostly food places. Federal Store, all these great local businesses, Shameful Tiki Lounge. Yeah, too many to list. Sorry if I forgot you.
Oh, you're too successful.
No, as if any of them are going to watch this. No, I'm joking. Maybe they will. Maybe they will. Yeah, so the tours, and then can I keep going? There was a third thing.
I mean, I would really love for you to get into the drama part of it all
drama,
because I'm
okay,
sure
yeah, that was the
everybody
third
wants to
thing.
hear the drama.
Okay, the drama part. Yeah, so, all right, so like boulevards. I mean, for people who might not know landscape architecture in cities and stuff, boulevards are completely public property, right? And that's one of the reasons why I like them so much. When people take over a public space and kind of add their own personal touch to it and enhance it and contribute to the community, it's quite a... People ask me why I don't do the other side of the sidewalk, because that's also the back boulevard. I only photograph the front boulevard, which is between the road and the sidewalk, right? I'll get to the drama, don't worry. So, so just to say, I'm more interested in the front boulevard because it's more on the Boulevard Gardens part, like a power move, I like to call it. Like, we're going out. Like, we're going out.
Yeah,
like,
all the
not
way.
just outside my fence, but like I'm going to be
Yeah.
bold and like enhance the public space like this. So I'm very much, when I'm shooting my Boulevard Gardens, I'm very much outside of private property. I'm usually in the middle of the road taking pictures of the Boulevard Garden from the road, a front elevation shot of the Boulevard Garden. So it could look like I'm taking photos of your home.
Right.
And I've been yelled at and approached aggressively. And one time, I'm pretty sure the person called the cops on me. And as I was, and yeah, that's just it sucks because you're just like I'm really doing something good.
Right.
And like it's only happened a handful of times. Like I want to say like 80% of the time that a resident has come up to me and asked me, "What are you doing?" Or wanted to know what I'm doing. 80% of the time when I tell them, like, oh, it's just a passion project, I'm photographing the Boulevard Gardens, they love it. And and we end up chatting and having a delightful time. But then maybe not 20%, 15, 10% of the time, it can go sideways.
Now, I love a good drama. So what's the worst thing that's happened?
Worst thing. Yeah, I gotta say it was the most recent one where I'm 99% sure she was calling the cops. And that's just because, so I was taking pictures and she's like, "Are you just taking pictures of people's homes?" I'm like, by this point I've been confronted a few times. So I was kind of annoyed. Usually I'm like, sorry, like extra sorry. This time I was like, no, I'm gonna clap back here.
Yeah.
So I'm just like, And she's like, well, do they know? And I'm like, no, they don't need to know. And then yeah, I humbled myself and I'm like, this is a passion project of mine where I'm taking photos of the Boulevard Gardens. I'm not taking pictures of the homes, it's the gardens. And then she gives me like a very dismissive, like mean, oh, and then turns around and pulls out her phone and then she's calling someone and then she's walking away, but slowly. And then I'm like, okay, I'm going to leave because she killed the vibe and I just want to go home now. And then so I'm like walking behind her and like every few paces she's looking back and like looking at what I'm wearing and like looking at me and talking. So I could be just making it up in my head, but it really felt like she was calling someone about me. Like it would be hard not to interpret it another way.
Right.
Like maybe it was a neighbor. Maybe it wasn't the police. Maybe it was a neighbor. And she's like, "There's a weirdo taking pictures of your home." And I don't know. Who's to say it's because I'm a bearded man who usually wears like street clothes and baggy clothing, and if someone who looked differently, who's to say the person who looked differently wouldn't be approached in the same manner? I don't know. I can't help but think they would be, but there are just people out there. I had a recent talk with someone, actually Zora, the realtor. She was like, when I like do some promoting, like drop stuff off for, when I'm going on people's properties, I'm always like, oh, are they going to yell at me? And like, come to think of it, I feel like I would probably get yelled at. Like if someone's just like super defensive of their space and privacy, I've come to learn through those experiences that, okay, some people may have legit reasons for not wanting their homes photographed.
Correct.
They could be hiding from someone for a good reason, righteous reason or a bad reason. They could be some past trauma. Maybe they've been victims of stalking. So from that, to put a positive note on this, negative drama bit, try to approach it with more empathy. In the same way I expect people to be empathetic towards me and not think I'm taking pictures of their homes. I should be a bit more empathetic perhaps and realize that some people just don't want their homes photographed. And who am I to say, well, that's not a valid reason to not want your home photographed.
But technically, they're not in the photos, so there would be no way to identify.
Oh, yeah. Technically, yeah. You can argue, yeah. And it's completely legally in my right. But the last thing I want to do is upset a neighbor.
Right.
If anyone, it's been a couple times where I've posted homes and people are like, they DM me and they're like, oh, that's my home. Do you mind taking it down? And I'll take it down.
Okay.
And
does that happen a lot?
No. I think it's happened twice.
Okay. Actually, like following up on because we've also spoken about your experience and sometimes how people approach you, not in the nicest of ways. And I always want to give people the benefit of the doubt. But the truth is that when you are a person of certain identities, that you don't have almost the most pleasant experiences in space. And one thing that I really want to talk about is in landscape architecture, there's this tendency for us to speak about public space and parks as being this almost like equalizer that we all should are going to be happy and welcomed, and that's not always the case. And so I just kind of wanted to take some time to reflect on that, because I think specifically for you, because you are putting yourself out there and also putting your work out there, documenting these things on. What are your thoughts on this idea of parks and public spaces being this idea that they're open and welcoming to all?
This idyllic image of them. Yeah, I mean, good question. I think it's funny how I grew up on the North Shore of Vancouver at a time when there were lots. The Persians were the dominant minority historically, and there's still pockets around North Vancouver where you can go a block and all the commercial buildings have like Farsi characters and signage. That's not as prominent as much as it was, but to answer your question, I'm starting to think a bit back on like my own experiences with experiencing the things you described. And growing up on the North Shore, I felt quite welcome. Never really felt too different. I only actually felt different and realized kind of what was happening when I went to UVic actually for my undergrad.
Oh, okay.
Because maybe it's changed now in Victoria, but I'm old, so this was like 15 years ago now. There were very few minorities, like visible minorities there. And that's when I started to realize, like there were a couple instances where I was like, ooh, like that guy in the store is like looking at me in a very harsh way, and like there were a couple instances of that, but more deeper than that, or maybe deeper is not the right word, but more obvious was how all my friends in UVic that I'm still in touch with and that I hung out with a lot, they were Egyptian, Persian, Black. I didn't really hang out with any white people there. and then I started thinking about who my day one homies from Vancouver are. Now I visualize my like 2, 3 closest friends are Asian, Lebanese, and like Moroccan. I was like, maybe there's something there. But growing up and nature and parks, I never really have felt that, but I know it's a thing. Like, what's the difference between going to a grocery store and getting looked at as opposed to going in a park and getting looked at? And you're still feeling unwelcome outside. But since I'm a landscape architect, you want me to talk about parks. So
I mean,
I'm
you can
also
talk
scared
about
of parks because of bears and because I'm not too
What about
outdoorsy
city
of a
parks?
person. City parks, yeah. Shoot. I don't know. Maybe we can circle back to that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I just like to, I wanted to hear your thoughts because I've encountered some resistance on some projects when I was asking that during a public engagement that we be intentional about asking members of like marginalized communities what makes them feel comfortable and safe. And people who have the privilege of existing in space without, like people who are not people of color, who don't experience as much racism, microaggressions as somebody like me, and I'm very much aware of those things, we're like, well, we don't think this is important. I was like, you really don't get it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just wanted to take this time to really just like remind everybody that while, especially landscape architects, that while like we designed with the intention of making these spaces that are inclusive and welcoming for all, that is not the case. That you actually have to be intentional to think about the perspective and the experiences of marginalized communities and how they experience space and design from that perspective as well.
And how do you design to make them more inclusive? Like that's a tough question.
I got a few ideas.
Do you? Okay. Part 2.
Yeah,
But
part
no,
2. We can
most
talk about
definitely,
that.
like the nature gap. If anyone just Googles that, there's a body of research that shows that people of color are far less likely to engage in outdoor nature-based activities. And if you ask them why, they'll say discrimination. We feel unwelcome. Yeah, microaggressions. I like that term because I feel that more often than I think like the more outright stuff.
Yeah.
Which they're both awful, but I think
I think Vancouver is great for the like it's like that. Yeah, it's full of those microaggressions. And in my experience, I've also noticed that the larger the group of people of color is, the more policing there is around that.
Right. Most definitely.
So, which means that like large community gatherings, like I cannot tell you how many times, every time we have like a big gathering with like a lot of friends who are people of color, like there's always somebody who comes and it's like, you guys are being too loud, turn down your music. I'm like, why are you allergic to people being joyful?
Right.
Like, what is this? So anyways, I just wanted to touch on that. And let's circle back to your tours and the Boulevard Gardens. Like we've spoken about kind of like how it came about. And I want to hear about your vision for the future. Where do you want to see it go? You've been doing this for the past 3 years now, it sounds like. How would you change certain things so that, like, even talking about this idea of being more safe and more comfortable, what are some of the things that you're looking to do in the future with this project?
Yeah, like if we were to go from like the small, like minutia, like short term, to touch on kind of as a segue too from what we're talking about. I just thought of this now. I have a friend who's a graphic designer, and we're going to be working together to create like a logo for me.
Oh, great.
So just thinking like right now how like if I get approached next time, I could just give someone like a business card or QR, you know, some sort of pamphlet. It's just like
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah.
To my PR person.
Yeah, aka like just
You
follow these links. Yeah. Yeah, like because I really do like it's still so fun for me to go on like after all these years to go on walks and take photos of Boulevard Gardens. Like I'm surprised how like just last weekend I went on like a walk and I was like I didn't go out on a walk with the intent of taking pictures of Boulevard Gardens. My plans got sidelined and derailed, so I was like, I guess I'll just go on a walk. And I wasn't expecting it, but like I got so many great Boulevard Garden photos on that walk. And there's so many more Boulevard Gardens that, I haven't captured yet because I like my front elevation shots, and there's often something blocking, like a car more often than not. Sometimes it's something else blocking it, so I don't get the Boulevard Garden I want because there's something blocking it. And B, another time, or the other thing is, they all look different at different times of the year. Fall and winter, or winter usually, the trees, street trees have shed their leaves, so you can see the home behind the Boulevard Garden. And one of the things I've noticed and really love and appreciate about Boulevard Gardens is how they're each so unique and reflective of their surroundings. If it's a beautiful, well-kept, modern type of home, they'll probably have a reflective of that landscapes design on their Boulevard Garden.
Right.
If it's a more like older, hippie, dilapidated type of home, then the Boulevard Gardens is a bit more like eclectic and rough around the edges. So you see them in different ways as you're photographing them over the years, over the seasons. And then midterm kind of stuff, I've been lucky enough to have gotten a few like speaking opportunities, speaking engagements. That was really dope because I'm here because I love talking about this project. So I do these speaking engagements for free. Some of them have been paid, so that makes it even sweeter.
You've been to Pechacucha.
Pechacucha, that was a big one.
deal.
That was a big one. Shout out Pechacucha, Becky Chan, Walrus, all those good Pechacucha people. That was so much fun. I'm doing the interior design show in Vancouver in September. Just various like UBC Botanical Gardens has a club. There's various garden clubs and committees around the city. UBC courses related to landscape architecture and horticulture and things like that have invited me out. So I'm really, conferences and things like that as well. So I'm really enjoy those speaking engagements because, I'm promoting this project, promoting all the good things that come out of Boulevard Gardening. And I'm able to just talk about Boulevard Gardens, which I can do for hours. Don't get me started.
Well, that's amazing.
I have a close friend, and we hung out the other week. Like, we went to like this social thing, and he's like, "Okay, Saba, you're only allowed to talk about Boulevard Gardens for 5 minutes." I'm like, "Oh, give me 10, man! Come on."
Double it up.
So and then so keep doing tours, social engagement, speaking engagements, and then the ultimate, keep adding to the Instagram, taking pictures, keep doing my Humans of Boulevard Gardens, which if anyone knows Humans of New York, where they profile New Yorkers and take beautiful portraits of them. As New Yorkers and tell their life story within the context of being New Yorkers. I do Humans of Boulevard Gardens, where I take photos of the people behind the Boulevard Gardens, and I tell kind of their stories within the context of their Boulevard Gardens. So adding to those, and that chapter, the Humans of Boulevard Gardens, will be the main chapter of what is my ultimate goal, which is to write a coffee book type of table.
Wow.
Which has, so just lots of photos of Boulevard Gardens and a chapter of the Humans of Boulevard Gardens. And if you go on my Instagram, you'll see a lot of my write-ups are, my captions are like longer write-ups where I talk about kind of anything that jumps out to me from that photo. I'll speak to. As a landscape architect, we have quite broad. Our profession is quite broad, so we have a general high-level understanding of many aspects of our city. So, if I see a particularly neat kind of Edwardian style home, I'll talk about not Boulevard Garden itself, but like let's talk about this home. Like this is a beautiful Edwardian home.
Right.
These are the characteristics of an Edwardian home, or these street trees that are planted by the city, so nothing to do with the Boulevard Garden themselves, but these street trees, and landscape architects love trees, so I'll talk about the street trees. Those will also be chapters in my book where, some of my best write-ups I'll write about. And people really have a strong, there's a market for that. People love to learn about the everyday built things that they see around them. And that's really a big part of my project is I call it environmental education and nature awareness. And that doesn't imply only the natural world and nature and plants and ecosystems, but also our built environment. Another word is urban literacy. So learning all the things you see around you. And it would be also really dope if any art gallery people watching this, I'd love to do a art show where I do collages, not collages, that's not the right word, but a grid or a grid of, if you see my Pecha Kucha presentation, which is online, you'll see a lot of the slides are a grid configuration of multiple boulevard gardens. I've taken thousands of photos of boulevard gardens, and it's really not so much the individual boulevard gardens themselves, but my project is more so about how the boulevard gardens contribute to their streetscapes.
Right.
And highlighting their individual unique personalities and qualities and traits, because most gardens in a public setting, so think, for example, gardens and parks, or those that surround schools and rec centers, for example, those are installed and maintained by professionals, but boulevard gardens are done by amateurs. So you often don't see that same level of personal expression. They just look quite different than other garden typologies, garden types that you see in public.
Yeah.
So when you put all the boulevard gardens together and juxtapose those positions, some interesting patterns start to emerge, and you notice similarities and differences. Book, show, more tours, more boulevard gardens.
Hey, listen, we're ready. And you know what? You have spoken it, which means that you've manifested it.
Yes, manifest that
So
shit.
the same way that you sharing your project online garnered all that support and the sponsorships and the sharing and the growth, hopefully this is the beginning.
Inshallah.
Yes.
Inshallah.
So thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your work.
Thank you.
I really do. One of the reasons why I wanted to speak to you today, not only are you a super cool person that I wanted to have a conversation with, but also because you've demystified the profession of landscape architecture. You've kind of brought it down to earth and used your photography and your tours and your passion as a way to enter into these stories of people who are trying to beautify their communities and bring more biodiversity. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
I appreciate you. And my little tradition is to ask my guests if they have one question for me.
Oh.
You get to ask me a question.
Oh, boy.
But you don't have to.
No, I got questions.
You
so
have
tell
questions.
me.
One question.
Questions. Okay. Well, which one? So, I want to hear about. You said you're going back to visit your family in Burundi, at the end of the month or something. Next month.
Oh yeah.
Soon.
Soon in 2 weeks. Yeah.
2 weeks. Wow. So, I want to, I guess, know about does that really feel like that's home for you? And what are some things you really want to do, you must do there? What are you most looking forward to? What are you not looking forward to?
Oh my goodness.
Loaded question.
So many things. Okay, number one, I miss home so much. And the funny thing is, I didn't actually grow up in Burundi my whole life. So I don't have a whole lot of friends there. So when I go there, it's just family time. So it's really great for me to rest and really just spend time with my siblings and my mom and my extended family and my nieces and nephews. The food. Let me tell you, there is no better food than the food back home.
Oh.
So, and I love eating. So I'm really looking forward to that. Looking forward to a different pace. Like North America is on a different pace that I don't think is human friendly. And so I'm looking forward to slowing down, to being more grounded. I've been like so homesick lately that I feel this strong pull of you absolutely have to go home. Like it's so, I know that there's something bigger behind that I'm not able to articulate at this moment. But it's just, I really feel like sometimes your land calls you and you have to answer the call. And I'm looking forward to doing that,
Nice.
to eating some good food, slowing down, and just also experiencing how rough like certain things can be. Like sometimes like there's no electricity and you're just like, what the fuck is going on here? Like what? It's good to be reminded.
Right.
Because I think a lot of people here take a lot of things for granted.
That part.
So
Big time. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm super excited.
I'm excited for you.
Thank you. And thank you for time.
Thank you.
And as a last, actually, how would you like people to support you and your project now and moving forward?
Oh, yeah, I don't know. Just show love on Instagram. Come out to the tours. Show love to Bitsy. Divine's a wonderful nonprofit. Lots of synergy between our projects. Yeah, just BIDC.ca. Check them out if you don't know what they're doing. Follow them on Instagram. Support young. Well, I'm not young. She's young. Support the next generation landscape architects who are doing amazing work like you're doing, and trying to diversify our profession, and modernizing it. That if people can do that would mean the world to me.
Thank you so much for your time. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Design Unmuted podcast. Please share this with someone who you think might find this valuable. Don't forget to subscribe and support at remeshadesign.com/designunmuted. You can follow me on Instagram at Design Unmuted to stay up to date with all the things I'm working on.